The crystal-clear air at 27,000 feet above Conches, France, turns breath into ice crystals. April 8, 1943, Oberleutnant Ralf Hermichen adjusts his oxygen mask, unable to hide the smirk spreading across his face. Through the greenhouse canopy of his Focke-Wulf 190A5, he watches something absurd climbing toward his formation. 16 American fighters. But these aren't the graceful Spitfires or nimble Soviet types German pilots have come to respect. These are different. The Americans have sent us flying milk bottles, he transmits to his wingman, laughter crackling through the radio. Below, the shapes lumber upward. Barrel-bodied, ungainly, their wings look too small for their massive fuselages. They strain against their own weight, 2,000 horsepower engines fighting 7 tons of metal trying to fall back to Earth. Hermichen banks his fighter, circling like a predator studying prey. His squadron mates join the mockery over the radio. Fat targets pretending to be warriors. The Americans clearly don't understand European air combat. What the German ace doesn't know, what none of his comrades circling above can imagine, is that they're watching the arrival of the weapon that will systematically dismantle the Luftwaffe. Within 18 months, these objects of derision will become instruments of annihilation. The mathematics of destruction are already loaded in those broad wings. 8 Browning M2 machine guns, 3,400 rounds of half-inch ammunition, a combined rate of fire exceeding 6,000 rounds per minute. Enough concentrated firepower to saw a Messerschmitt in half before the pilot realizes he's being shot at. The laughter is about to die. June 1940, France collapses under German blitzkrieg. The Luftwaffe sweeps everything from European skies. In offices across America, military planners realize with cold clarity that the United States is woefully unprepared for modern air warfare. At Republic Aviation on Long Island, a Georgian-born immigrant named Alexander Kartveli receives an urgent specification from the Army Air Corps. They need a high-altitude interceptor capable of matching and beating Germany's finest fighters. What Kartveli designs defies every convention of fighter aircraft philosophy. It will be a dinosaur, he tells his design team, studying the blueprints. But it will be a dinosaur with good proportions. The P-47B prototype that rolls out in May 1941 shocks everyone. At 9,900 pounds empty, it weighs 65% more than its predecessor. The massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, 18 cylinders producing 2,000 horsepower, dominates the nose. Behind the cockpit, complex turbo supercharger ducting gives the fuselage an almost pregnant bulge. Test pilots approaching it for the first time ask variations of the same question. This thing actually flies? Not only does it flies like nothing else where it matters most. The turbo supercharger, fed by exhaust gases, delivers sea-level performance in the stratosphere. At 27,000 feet, where conventional fighters gasp for air, the Thunderbolt's massive engine maintains full power. The turbine spins at 20,000 RPM, forcing compressed air into cylinders that burn fuel with volcanic intensity. But the machine comes with a deadly learning curve. Major Hubert Zemke takes command of the 56th Fighter Group at Bridgeport, Connecticut in late 1942. A no-nonsense leader, he expects to train his pilots on the new Republic fighter and deploy to Europe within months. Instead, he watches his unit bleed. 18 pilots killed, 41 aircraft destroyed, September 1942 through January 1943. The P-47 kills more Americans in training than it will kill Germans in its first months of combat. The aircraft ground loops on landing, the massive torque twisting inexperienced pilots into the dirt. It torque rolls on takeoff if you're not ready for the engine's brutal power. And it dives with such enthusiasm that pilots discover something terrifying: compressibility. Above 500 miles per hour, the controls freeze. Shockwaves form on the wings. The stick won't move. You're in an uncontrollable ballistic trajectory toward Earth, and all you can do is pray the air gets thicker before the ground gets closer. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a farm boy from Oklahoma, who will become one of America's deadliest aces, describes his first flight. It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. The power was unbelievable. You didn't fly it, you aimed it. But those who survive the learning curve discover something extraordinary. The P-47 is brutally honest. It doesn't forgive mistakes, but it rewards skill. And for pilots who master its peculiar characteristics, it offers capabilities no other fighter possesses. By April 1943, the 56th Fighter Group is ready for combat. Ready is perhaps too strong a word. They're alive, they can fly the machine without killing themselves, and they're about to face the most experienced fighter force in the world. The Germans have been fighting continuously since 1939. Veterans of Poland, France, Britain, Russia. Men with hundreds of combat missions, aces with dozens of kills. The Americans have exactly 0 days of combat experience. On April 8, 1943, 16 P-47 Thunderbolts of the 4th Fighter Group climbed toward a formation of Focke-Wulf 190s over France. Above them, German pilots watch and laugh. Below them, American pilots grip their controls and try to remember their training. The transformation is about to begin. The first encounters confirm every German prejudice. The P-47s can't turn with the Focke-Wulf 190s. They can't climb with the Messerschmitt 109s. Their handling at medium altitudes feels sluggish, heavy, ponderous. German pilots quickly develop tactics: attack from below where the Thunderbolts struggle, force turning fights where agility matters more than firepower. Hauptmann Josef Pips Priller, commanding officer of Jagdgeschwader 26, files his combat report with confidence. The new American fighter is meat for the slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, climbs like a pregnant cow. The statistics seem to confirm German confidence. First month of operations, 14 Thunderbolts lost, only 3 German fighters confirmed destroyed. The RAF, observing from their Spitfire squadrons, quietly suggests the Americans might reconsider their choice of mount. British pilots joke that the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 is to unstrap and run around the roomy cockpit. But something strange is happening that German intelligence fails to notice. The P-47s that do get shot down have absorbed incredible punishment before falling. One aircraft returns from a May 4th mission with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes. Damage that would have disintegrated a Messerschmitt or Spitfire into aluminum confetti. The massive radial engine, lacking vulnerable coolant systems, shrugs off hits that would stop a liquid-cooled fighter instantly. Cannon shells that would explode a glycol radiator and leave an enemy gliding to Earth just punch holes in aluminum and keep going. More significantly, when P-47s get their guns on target, the results aren't just effective, they're catastrophic. The Thunderbolt's weapons battery creates a convergence zone unlike anything German pilots have experienced. 8 Browning M2 heavy machine guns, synchronized to fire through the propeller arc. Each gun feeds from an individual ammunition box holding 425 rounds. At convergence distance, typically set at 300 yards, all 8 ballistic paths intersect in a zone roughly 6 feet in diameter. Anything in that zone faces 100 half-inch projectiles per second. Each bullet travels at 2,900 feet per second. Each carries enough kinetic energy to punch through engine blocks. German pilots have fought against rifle-caliber weapons that annoy more than destroy. They've fought against cannon with devastating individual shells but limited ammunition. They've never fought against sustained, concentrated firepower that can maintain fire for 30 seconds straight. An eternity in aerial combat. June 26, 1943. Above Évreux, France. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron flies tail-end Charlie in a formation of P-47s, returning from escort duty. 16 Focke-Wulf 190s from Jagdgeschwader 26, led by Hauptmann Wilhelm Ferdinand Gallant, younger brother of the famous Adolf, execute a perfect bounce, diving from the sun with overwhelming speed advantage. Johnson's Thunderbolt takes the first hits. 20mm cannon shells explode across his aircraft. The canopy shatters. Hydraulic fluid sprays into the cockpit. The engine cowling tears away. Fire erupts behind the instrument panel.
Shrapnel cuts Johnson's nose and leg. He tries to bail out. The canopy is jammed. A cannon shell exploded in the track, welding it shut. He's trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet. What happens next will become legendary on both sides of the conflict. Despite having no forward visibility through an oil-covered windscreen, despite an engine shaking itself apart, despite controls that barely respond, Johnson manages to level the aircraft and point it toward England. The P-47 continues flying with damage that should reduce it to falling debris. Then, a lone Focke-Wulf 190 discovers the crippled Thunderbolt limping toward the channel at less than 170 miles per hour. Historical research has never definitively identified this pilot, though German combat reports from that day list several possibilities.
The German positions himself behind Johnson's P-47, opens fire with 4 20mm cannon and 2 13mm machine guns. Johnson can't evade. He can only huddle behind his armor plate and pray. The Thunderbolt absorbs the entire cannon ammunition load. The German repositions, fires again with machine guns only, cannon exhausted. Still, the P-47 flies. The German pilot pulls alongside, stares in disbelief. Johnson can see his face clearly. Young, blonde, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. The German repositions again, empties his remaining machine gun ammunition into the Thunderbolt. Still, it flies. The German pulls alongside one more time, shakes his head in apparent amazement, gives an informal salute, peels away, out of ammunition. Johnson's P-47 lands at Manston with his engine failing on the runway. The crew chief stops counting bullet holes after reaching 200. One cannon shell exploded inches from Johnson's head. Another detonated against the armor plate behind a seat. The engine took direct hits. Control cables were partially severed. 3 of the 4 main longerons, the structural backbone of the fuselage, were shot through. Yet the aircraft brought him home. The survival of Johnson's aircraft sends shockwaves through both air forces. American engineers studying the wreckage realize they've underestimated their own creation. German intelligence receiving combat reports from multiple pilots initially refuses to believe it. No aircraft can absorb that much punishment. But testimony from multiple pilots confirms the impossible. The Thunderbolt has taken everything the Luftwaffe's best fighter can deliver and survived. By July 1943, American pilots are learning to exploit the P-47's true strengths. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke discovers the secret through brutal trial and error. Don't turn with them, don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight, use your power, use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight, initially seen as a crippling disadvantage, becomes a weapon. In a dive, nothing can catch it. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 can reach 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter can achieve even in a vertical dive. This speed converts to altitude in a zoom climb that leaves pursuing fighters helplessly behind. Captain Walker Bud Mahurin develops what becomes known as boom and zoom tactics. Pilots call it the Thunderbolt turkey shoot. Instead of traditional dogfights, P-47 formations climb to 30,000 feet, higher than German fighters can effectively operate. When Luftwaffe fighters appear below, the Thunderbolts roll inverted and dive, reaching speeds that make deflection shooting impossible for defending Germans. At the bottom of these dives, the American heavy machine guns speak. German pilots who survive describe it as facing a wall of lead. The combined firepower creates an impenetrable zone of destruction. Aircraft caught in the convergence pattern don't just fall, they disintegrate. August 17, 1943. The dual raid on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the deepest penetration into Germany attempted to date. Major David Schilling leads the 62nd Fighter Squadron against a formation of Messerschmitt 110 destroyer aircraft positioning to attack B-17s. The twin-engine fighters, heavily armed but less maneuverable, are the Luftwaffe's specialized bomber killers. Schilling's flight of 4 Thunderbolts rolls into their attack dive from 28,000 feet. Unteroffizier Hinrich Roth, a gunner in one of the Messerschmitt 110s, survives to recount it in a POW interrogation. The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven. I opened fire at 800 meters. Good hits. I saw strikes on the fighter's wing. The P-47 didn't even wobble. Then, he fired.
The aircraft ahead of us simply came apart. Not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from fuselage. Tail severed, the crew compartment shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds, a 110 became nothing. 8 Messerschmitt 110s destroyed in less than a minute.
Each P-47 carries 3,400 rounds total, weighing nearly 900 pounds. At convergence distance, all 8 guns' ballistic paths intersect. Anything in that zone faces 100 half-inch projectiles per second, each traveling faster than the speed of sound. The ammunition itself reveals American industrial capacity. While German fighters struggle with limited cannon ammunition, typically 120 to 200 rounds, American pilots can maintain fire for over half a minute. The standard combat load mixes armor-piercing incendiary, armor-piercing incendiary tracer, and standard ball ammunition, designed to both destroy and ignite. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabby Gabreski, who will become the top American ace in Europe with 28 victories, describes the effect. When you hit them with all 8, they don't just go down, they explode. I saw a 109 literally cut in half, tail falling one way, nose and wings another. The pilot never knew what hit him. By September 1943, the Luftwaffe discovers another horrifying reality about the P-47. Its performance improves dramatically with altitude, while German fighters suffer. The turbo-supercharged Double Wasp maintains rated power up to 30,000 feet. German fighters relying on mechanical superchargers see performance degrade significantly above 25,000 feet. The sky has layers, and the Americans own the top. October 8, 1943, Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 206 victories, leads Jagdgeschwader 1 against a B-17 formation at 28,000 feet over Bremen. His Focke-Wulf 190A6 feels sluggish, unresponsive in the thin air. The BMW 801 engine, powerful at medium altitudes, gasps for oxygen nearly 6 miles above Earth. When P-47s of the 56th Fighter Group dive on his formation from 32,000 feet, the German fighters are sitting ducks. Robert Johnson, now an experienced combat pilot, the same man who survived impossible damage 3 months earlier, flies at 31,000 feet when he spots Philipp's distinctive Focke-Wulf with elaborate nose art. Johnson's combat report is clinical. Open fire at 300 yards, 30-degree deflection. Observed strikes along entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. Philipp's death sends shockwaves through the Luftwaffe. If one of their best, a man who survived over 500 combat missions on both the Eastern and Western fronts, can survive against the Thunderbolts, what chance do average pilots have? The German High Command orders an immediate investigation into the P-47's capabilities. The report delivered to Reichsmarshal Göring in November 1943 is sobering. Service ceiling exceeds 42,000 feet. Dive speed approaches the sound barrier. Armor includes 3/8-inch steel plate, half-inch bulletproof glass, armored deflection plates around the engine. Most disturbingly, its rugged construction allows it to absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. The laughter has stopped. January 1, 1944. A new variant begins arriving in England that completes the transformation from laughingstock to nightmare. The P-47 D-22 features a Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller with paddle blades 13 feet in diameter, with broad chord blades that bite into air like massive oars. The improvement is immediate and dramatic. Where earlier Thunderbolts climbed at an anemic 2,200 feet per minute at sea level, paddle blade variants achieve 3,000 feet per minute, matching or exceeding German fighters at most altitudes. The massive propeller also improves acceleration, allowing P-47s to build energy faster in level flight. Hauptmann Hans Knoke of Jagdgeschwader 11, a veteran with 200 combat missions, encounters the new variants in February 1944 during a bomber interception near Hanover. He writes in his combat diary, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb.
We bounced a formation near Hanover, expecting our usual advantage. They turned into us and climbed with us. When we tried to disengage, they followed us up to 30,000 feet. Schmidt was caught and blown apart, nothing left but smoke and fragments. These are not the same machines we laughed at last year. The paddle blade propeller does more than improve performance. It changes the sound. The distinctive thundering roar created by blade tips reaching supersonic speeds can be heard from miles away. German ground troops report identifying approaching P-47s by sound alone. A deep, threatening rumble that means death from above. They begin calling it Donnerschlag, thunderclap.
June 6, 1944. Over 500 P-47s provide air cover for the invasion, creating an impenetrable umbrella over the beaches. Oberleutnant Wolfgang Fischer of Jagdgeschwader 12, one of only 3 German pilots to reach the beaches that day, reports, "The sky belonged to the Americans. Thunderbolts stacked from sea level to 30,000 feet. We tried to break through at dawn. 12 fighters from our group. I was the only one to return. The P-47s were waiting at every altitude. You couldn't climb over them, couldn't dive under them. Their guns turned our fighters into aluminum rain." In the weeks following D-Day, P-47s systematically destroyed German movement in daylight. The statistics are staggering. June 1944 alone, 651 locomotives destroyed, 3,847 trucks destroyed, 512 tanks and armored vehicles destroyed, 4,553 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. The Wehrmacht is forced to move only at night, severely hampering their ability to respond to Allied advances. The P-47's transition to ground attack reveals another dimension of its dominance. The heavy machine gun battery proves equally effective against ground targets. Standard armor-piercing incendiary ammunition penetrates the top armor of most German vehicles. The sheer volume of fire destroys soft targets in seconds. A 2-second burst puts 160 half-inch projectiles into a target area the size of a truck. But it's the addition of bombs and rockets that transforms the P-47 into a true multi-role monster. The D-25 variant carries 2 1,000-pound bombs under the wings and a 500-pounder under the fuselage. Later variants add zero-length rocket stubs for 10 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, each equivalent to a 105mm artillery shell. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment during the Normandy campaign, experiences P-47 ground attacks firsthand. They came in low, so low you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying. Engines roaring, rockets screaming, then the hammer of those heavy machine guns. A column of our trucks simply ceased to exist. 20 vehicles transformed into burning wreckage in one pass. The psychological effect on the men was devastating. They called them jabos, fighter bombers, but these were something beyond that. They were flying artillery with the accuracy of snipers. German pilots developed what medical officers called jabo fever, physical symptoms of stress appearing when thunderbolts are reported in the area. Veterans who faced Spitfires and Hurricanes without fear became physically ill before missions against P-47s. The distinctive thunder of approaching thunderbolts causes panic among ground troops who know survival means finding cover immediately. But the real terror isn't just what the P-47 can do. It's what the P-47 represents. Republic Aviation's Farmingdale factory on Long Island runs 24 hours a day. At peak production, 1 complete Thunderbolt rolls off the line every hour, around the clock. The Evansville plant in Indiana, built from empty farmland in 1942, produces 500 aircraft per month by 1944. Each P-47D requires 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of electrical wiring, 2,000 pounds of aluminum, 300 pounds of rubber. The engine alone contains 2,400 individual components machined to tolerances of 1,000th of an inch. Yet American workers, many of them women, who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assemble these complex machines with precision exceeding peacetime standards. Republic Aviation produces 15,683 P-47s during the war, more than any other American fighter. The ammunition production is equally staggering. Each P-47 sortie requires 3,400 rounds of South 50 caliber ammunition. With hundreds of Thunderbolts flying daily missions, ammunition consumption exceeds 10 million rounds per month by mid-1944. The Lake City Arsenal in Missouri produces 30 million rounds monthly, each cartridge manufactured to tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch, ensuring reliable feeding through synchronized gun mechanisms. Even pilot training reflects overwhelming industrial advantage. By 1944, the United States graduates 30,000 pilots annually from advanced training, more than Germany trained in the entire war. Each P-47 pilot receives a minimum of 400 hours of flight training before entering combat. German pilots, by contrast, enter combat with less than 100 hours total time by war's end. Lieutenant Eugene Roberts, arriving in England in September 1944. I had 420 hours in my logbook, including 75 hours in the P-47. I'd fired at toned targets, practiced deflection shooting, studied gun camera film from actual combat. My first mission, I knew exactly what to do. The German pilot I faced couldn't have had half my experience. It wasn't even a fair fight.
March 1945. Hauptmann Josef Priller, the same pilot who mocked P-47s as pregnant cows 2 years earlier, is interviewed by German propaganda officials seeking to boost morale. His statement is deemed too demoralizing for publication. The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. Its firepower is unprecedented. Weapons that never jam, never overheat, never run out of ammunition in normal combat. It carries bombs like a medium bomber, fires rockets like artillery, and fights like a fighter when needed. But beyond the machine is what it represents: unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20. We lose 1, it's gone forever. Their pilots arrive better trained than our instructors. They have fuel for training, ammunition for practice, spare parts for everything. We have nothing but courage. And courage without resources is just delayed defeat. We laughed at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, you know death has come calling. The sound haunts us, mechanical, precise, unstoppable. Like everything American, it's about overwhelming material superiority. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead. By April 1945, the Luftwaffe exists largely on paper. Fuel shortages ground most aircraft. Experienced pilots are dead or captured. Airfields are cratered ruins. German pilots who do fly face an impossible equation. Attacking means facing P-47 formations that own every altitude from ground level to 40,000 feet. Feldwebel Klaus Brechenschneider, one of the last German pilots trained in 1945, flies exactly 1 combat mission before the war ends. His encounter with P-47s over Leipzig lasts 12 seconds. I saw them diving from above, 4 Thunderbolts in perfect formation. I tried to turn, but they were too fast. The leader fired from 500 meters. My aircraft shook like it was hit by sledgehammers. The engine exploded, the wings separated, I barely escaped. In the parachute, I watched them destroy my entire Staffel. 6 fighters gone in under a minute. The sky rained burning aluminum and bodies. The final statistics defy comprehension. In Europe, 3,752 German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,315 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 68,000 trucks destroyed. The 9th Air Force alone flew 213,873 combat sorties, dropped 120,000 tons of bombs, fired 135 million rounds of ammunition, and launched 60,000 rockets. The Thunderbolt units achieved a 4.6-to-1 kill ratio while maintaining the lowest loss rate of any Allied fighter bomber. Former adversaries meet in peace. General Lieutenant Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, is asked about the P-47. His response recorded on video: "We made a terrible mistake in 1943. We saw this big, heavy fighter and laughed. The Americans don't understand air combat, we said. They built a bomber and called it a fighter. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one, designed around production, firepower, and survivability. They understood that in a war of attrition, the plane that could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower would win. They were right." The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible, the cockpit was comfortable, the visibility excellent. It was a pilot's aircraft wrapped in armor. But what really impressed me was realizing America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a 2-ocean war. Each required an engine more complex than anything Germany produced, yet they built them faster than we could build simple fighters. That's when I knew we never had a chance.
Those guns, we called them Roosevelt's piano because of the sound they made. Once you heard that sound, you never forgot it. Many of my friends heard it for the last time. The P-47 didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, it destroyed it.
At the United States Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, a restored P-47D sits among other legendary fighters. Below it, a display case contains spent .50 caliber shells and a strip of gun camera film showing a Focke-Wulf 190 disintegrating under fire. A quote from an unnamed German pilot taken from a 1945 interrogation report. "We laughed when we first saw them, fat, ugly American fighters that couldn't turn, couldn't climb, couldn't fight. We stopped laughing when we realized they didn't need to turn or climb. They just pointed those guns at you and you ceased to exist." The laughter died with our comrades. The P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat as an object of derision and ended the war as an instrument of annihilation. In between, 8 synchronized Browning machine guns rewrote the rules of aerial warfare and buried the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of lead. German pilots laughed at the ungainly American fighter in April 1943. By May 1945, there were no German pilots left to laugh. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America.